There's at the beginning of Slichos, I just copied it because I didn't think it was in the beginning of Slichos. The Rebbe writes, he quotes a Medrash of the Zuta, what's the union of Slichos? What is it? What's the origin of Slichos? It says David HaMelech knew that the Beis HaMikdash is going to be destroyed, and the Kabbanis are not going to happen anymore. No more sacrifices. By Mitzvah Yisrael, and he was very painful for the Yidden. But what's going to forgive them? Like this, the Beis HaMikdash forgave, the sacrifices forgave. Now there's no Beis HaMikdash, no Kabbanis. How are the Jews going to get forgiven? Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu David. So Hashem said to David, when the Tzaris come to the Jews for their sins, Yamdu lefana yachad, the Jews should stand together before me, ba'guda achas in one group, v'yisvada alav v'neseim lefanai, and they should confess their sins before me, and they should say the slicha, they should say slichas, v'ani ena isam, and Hashem says, I'm going to answer them. Okay? So Hashem said, there's no Beis HaMikdash, you know what you need to do. When you have issues, get together, stand together, united in a group, they'll say slichas, and then says, how did Hashem reveal this to David HaMelech? And he said, Vayaver Hashem upon Vayikra, Melamed, it teaches us, Sheyared HaKadosh Baruch Hu min harafo shaloi, Hashem came down from his darkness, Kishatz, like a chazan, Shemesati b'talisai, like a chazan, leading by the Yamid. Hashem taught Moshe Rabbeinu the Seder of Slichas. So basically what the Rebbe is saying over here is that David HaMelech was told by Hashem that what's the union of Slichas? When the Yidden stand together in unity and they daven to me, they're going to be forgiven. That's the origin of Slichas. We know the Rebbe mentioned many times in Farbrengens that there was a minig by Chassidim, they would go kaikel dik to Slichas. Kaikel dik it's a Yiddish word, but in English it means they would go a little bit tipsy to Slichas. They wouldn't go, like a non
stiff,
like a stiff person going, okay, slichas, okay, let's go, we're going to try the slichas mid. The Rebbe said the Chassidim used to go tipsy to slichas. Simply it meant they used to take mashke. Not chas, you don't want to be drunk when you say slichas. I mean, you're not going to be able to say slichas if you're drunk. But what the inyan is that we should be a little loosened up. I mentioned the pastor was a Yid when Rabbi Yosef Shusterman, when he came out of Eretz Yisrael.
This is for tomorrow for Hebrew school. Sorry.
When he got out of Russia, there was a Farbrengen, Simchas Bais in Philadelphia. He used to send the Bachim out. It happened to be that year. What year was it? It was probably Lamed Daled, maybe earlier. Maybe Lamed Aleph, I don't remember. Anyway, so after the community left, there was a Farbrengen, a Chassidic Farbrengen. Anyway, so Rabbi Yosef was saying to Rabbi Shem, there's a lot of Chassidic Yidden there. He said that he believes that when you go into the Rebbe for Yechidus, you have to take a good cup of mashke before you go in. He said that Yeah, he believes that before you go into Yechidus with the Rebbe, you need to take a good, strong shara mashke. And he said, of course, not chas v'sholom, you don't want to go into Yechidus drunk. But you want to go in to be able to loosen up. You need to loosen up a little bit. If you're too stiff and you go into Yechidus, or you're too stiff and you go to Slichas, so then you can't open, stiff people can't open up. You know, they need to move the joints a little bit. And when the Rebbe meant, that's a kaikol dekerheit, which means moving a little bit, shaking a little bit, tipsy a little bit, it doesn't only mean with mashke. It means that you need to loosen up a little bit before slichas. Why? Because slichas, as we just mentioned, what the Rebbe quotes the Medrash, is a Jew is coming to Hashem before Rosh Hashanah, and he's asking forgiveness. And Hashem promises us forgiveness. But number one, you gotta mean it. So number two, you gotta know what you're asking forgiveness for. If a person doesn't know, the worst thing somebody could do is not to know that they did something wrong. If you don't think you did something wrong, so what are you going to ask forgiveness for? So you need to loosen up a little bit. You need to loosen up and realize that, yeah, I probably did a bunch of things. But at the same time, as the opening thing after Ashrei of Slichas is, L'cha Hashem atzdaka v'lanu beishes aponim. We come to Slichas, and this phenomenal concept, according to Chassidis, what Slichas is all about, or Shani Yom Kippur is all about. You come to Slichas, and you start Slichas by saying, L'cha Hashem atzdaka v'lanu beishes aponim. To you Hashem is tzedakah, that means you are going to give us tzedakah, which by definition means something I don't deserve. If you work and you deserve it, that's not called tzedakah. You're getting paid for your job. Tzedakah is when you don't deserve it, and you're getting it anyway. We come to slichas, and we say, Ki imcha haslicha leman tivore. With God is a level of slicha. Where does slichas come? I mean, the concept of slicha, that Hashem forgives us, is an unbelievable thing. A Jew comes to Hashem, and most people, without Chassidus, they're depressed by Slichas, they're depressed Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, they're depressed even on Simchas Torah. They're depressed. I mean, it just doesn't, it's self-understood. If you're depressed Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, how can you not be depressed on Simchas Torah? Because Simchas Torah is the same thing Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, is Sukkot and Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. So a Jew realizes that it's an unbelievable thing. You come to daven to Hashem, you stand together with a minyan for slichas, and we're getting forgiveness from a place that nothing really matters what we did. Nothing really matters. You need to come, as the Medrash uses the expression, Baguda Achas. Baguda Achas means one unit. I mentioned there was a story, a Chassid had to go travel somewhere, and the wagon driver was a Yid. He wanted to know, they heard this guy davens too long. So he says to the guy, the night before, he says, when are we leaving the next morning? When are we getting out of here? So the Chassid says to him, I generally like to daven with a minyan. He says, okay, the minyan was 7 o'clock. So, okay. 8 o'clock, we can be out of here already, 7 o'clock comes, 8 o'clock comes, 9 o'clock comes, 10 o'clock comes, 11 o'clock comes, 12 o'clock comes, 1 o'clock, and the guy's still davening. So finally he finished. So the Balagola, the wagon driver, says to him, you told me you tried to daven with a minyan. He says, yeah, what I meant is the 10 powers of my soul. I didn't mean a physical minyan that, I meant the 10 powers of my soul. That's my minyan. The Aguda Achas, When Hashem tells David and Melech to gather together a good achas, it probably doesn't only mean, a bunch of individuals getting together in one bundle, in one minyan. It means, by the way, all the powers of the person are in the same place. By us, most of the time, the chokhmah is in one place, the intellect is in one place, the midas are somewhere else, machshav is b'chlal flying around the universe, and dibur, everything's in different places. So what happens? The guy, where are you at? Where's the person at? You don't even know where he's at because he's all over the place. If you're all over the place, as they say, you're a jack of all trades, a master of none. See, by Chassidim, they used to say, the Lubavitch Chassidim used to say, there are people that run around to a lot of different rebbes. This guy comes to town, this guy comes to town. They're running all over the place. If you run all over the place, if you have 10 rebbes, you have no rebbe. You need to have one person, a Selichot Rav, one rebbe, not 10 rebbes. In fact, there were Chassidim that when the Alter Rebbe passed away, there were Chassidim of the great Chassidim, that couldn't become Chassidim of the Mittel Rebbe. When the Mittel Rebbe passed away, Reb Hillel Paritcher had a very difficult time becoming a Chassid Tzemach Tzedek. He says, I gave over my Yechida to the Mittel Rebbe. How can I give him? I gave him myself already to the Mittel Rebbe. Now there's a new, I can't, it took him a long time. He had to work on himself to become a Chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek. So people need to be in one place. You can't be all over the place. If you're all over the place, you're nowhere. So you stand together before Slichus, and the fact that there's the Sagud Achas, the unity, Atem Nitzavim Eyim Kolchem. So what happens? The Eibusher gives forgiveness to every single Jew. And it's not something that you have to be, you have to be serious, because it is a serious time, because we're tapping into very deep resources of ourselves and very deep resources of Hashem. But it's something that we don't, that's why you have to go a little bit we have to shake ourselves up a little bit. Sometimes you have a drink, not mashke, but you have a drink, it says, shake well before using. Yeah, shake well before using. Why? Because it's stuff at the bottom, and there's the liquid, the things settle at the bottom, so it's not usable. You need to shake it up before using. What does it mean, shaking up? A Jew before Rosh Hashanah has to shake up. We have to shake ourselves up. We have to wake up a little bit and come to sleep. No. 1 o'clock in the morning. Okay. Yeah, we have a Persian breakfast at 1:30. No.
Pacha.
Anyway, so this is the inyan of Slichus. The inyan of Slichus is we stand before the Eibusher. We know what we are. We're in ourselves. We're all united, meaning our thought and speech and action are all in the same place. Our intellect, our emotions are in the same place. Everything's in the same place. We're not all over the place. A person who's all over the place is nowhere. Even the Ruchnius. This, he's running around and this and that. You know what? They're nowhere. You have to come back good achas. The person needs to be united with himself. He needs to be united with other Jews in the way of a minyan. And then what happens? The Eibusher reveals this level of slichus that the Eibusher puts on a talis, kaviyachol, which means he puts on the level of makifim. It's vayaver Hashem alpanav the yud gimel midas harachmim, and that is revealed to the Jew in a way that there's no aveda at all. It's not that there is a sin and we get forgiven for the sin. Slichus, Yom Kippur, all these times, Chassidus explains, is a time that we tap into Hashem in such a way there are no sins. There are no sins. Why? Because it's the essence of the Jew tapping into the essence of Hashem, and that's what happens. So l'chaim, everybody say l'chaim. L'chaim. Say l'chaim in order to say slichas. Huh? You can't represent.
I got you, man. No, don't worry.
Anyway. Chaim. And for slichas. There's a whole thing now because in a lot of places they have musical slichas. You know, ganz nice. The Rabbonim Lubavitch came out with an issur against having musical slichas. So you should see the comments. Unbelievable. Anyway, let's analyze a different perspective from Chassidus. A Jew believes, if you have Chassidus, you believe that everything is Ashkocha Pratis. Everything is coming from Hashem. So now you have a Jew doesn't have Aveda. A Jew doesn't sin. So, without Chassidus, you have a problem. The Jew doesn't sin. It's no good. He doesn't sin. He went against Hashem. And therefore, what's the outcome of that? You got to get depressed. Went against Hashem. By Chassidus explains that when a person sins, Hashem made him sin. Hashem made the person sin. What do you mean he made the person sin? There is before the fact and there's after the fact. Before the fact, Hashem says, do not sin. You're not allowed to sin. You can't sin. You're not allowed to sin. It's spiritual suicide. You're cutting yourself away from Hashem. You can't do it. You're not allowed to sin. Sometimes a person falls prey and they do sin. They do an Aveda. So the question is, was that Aveda after the fact supposed to happen or not? Was that Aveda after the fact, was it supposed to happen or wasn't supposed to happen? So, without Chassidus, the answer is probably no, it shouldn't have happened. According to Chassidus, of course it had to happen. Because if it wasn't supposed to happen, it wouldn't have happened. If Hashem didn't want Adam Rishon to sin, he wouldn't have sinned. How? Because if I want to eat something not kosher, the power of my hand to move, and the power of my mouth to chew, and my throat to swallow, is all functioning from Hashem. If Hashem took away the power for a second, it wouldn't be. If Hashem didn't want me to sin, Hashem could have made remote control from Hashem that you open your mouth to sin, to say something you're not allowed to, or to eat something you're not allowed to, Hashem could make, boop, he locks the door, and that's it. You can't talk. You can't eat. Hashem doesn't do that. Hashem allows us to eat what we're not allowed to, and to talk what we're not, and to think what we're not, and to do what we're not allowed to. So why is Hashem doing it? The answer is, and this is another remarkable concept of Chassidus, Hashem wants us to reach a higher level than we would have if we didn't sin. That's only after the fact. It has to be clear. This is not before the sin, before the fact, okay, I'm going to sin because that's what Hashem wants me to do. That's echt of a oshuv. That doesn't work. Then Hashem doesn't help you do tshuva. Even then you could push. But Hashem is not going to help you do tshuva. It's going to be very, very difficult. But when a Jew sins, we sinned in the past year. I'm sure everybody in this room at least did one sin in the past year. So they sinned. Now it comes Selichos. It comes in Rosh Hashanah, Aser Simei Tshuva, Rosh Hashanah. So now a Jew says, okay, the fact is I sinned. I sinned. I did something Hashem told me not to do. Well, what do we do now?
Where do we go from here?
How do we get out of here, like they say? Like somebody asked the Rebbe, wie kriegt man alles von danet? How do you get out of here? The answer is, what do you mean? Hashem says, I wanted you to sin, and the proof is Hashem allowed us to sin. Why? Because I want you to reach a higher level than if you didn't sin. It's called tshuva. Where Baal Tshuva stands, Tzaddikim Gemurim don't stand.
Is there no difference between allowing us to sin and wanting us to sin?
Huh?
No difference between allowing us to sin and wanting us to sin?
There's no difference. Hashem wants us to sin, not from our perspective. Our perspective, we're not allowed to sin. Okay? Why does Hashem allow me to sin? If Hashem allows me, that means He wants me to do it. After the fact, not before. Before the fact, you're not allowed to sin.
Why would you get punished for anything?
Huh?
Why get punished for anything?
Why do you get punished? Because you didn't do the level what Hashem wanted you to accomplish through tshuva. Because if you did tshuva, you're not punished.
Where's Azad? Where is Azad?
Okay, anyway. I saw him the other day. Anyway, so Hashem allows us to sin, again, after the fact. So now we come Selichos, and we say, Hashem, okay, you made me sin, you allowed me to sin, you wanted me to sin, I wasn't supposed to do it, I'm sorry for what I did, but let me reach now a higher level than I would have reached without it.
I think there's still guilt. There is no depression, but there is guilt.
A person should feel guilty that he went against Hashem, even though Hashem wanted it to happen, because He wanted me to reach a level I wouldn't have reached otherwise.
Isn't that a Jewish trait?
Yes, guilt is a Jewish trait. Because Jews are born from Jewish mothers who instill Jewish guilt in the kids. That's a phenomenon that you're not going to change.
Where do they get it from?
From their mothers. They got it from Chava, the original mother. It didn't start anywhere along the
Why
way.
did it only come to the Jews?
Ein Kol Choy, she was the mother of all living. Who's living? I mentioned the Rebbe Rashab was once Farbrengen about Amalek. Amalek, Chassidus explains, Yedei Asribeinim Mechavan Limribeit. Amalek knows the 7 nations were the 7 midos of Klippa. Amalek, Yedei Asribeinim, Reishis Goyim Amalek, Amalek the Mar says, Yedei Asribeinim Mechavan Limribeit. He understood and he rebelled against him. He understood God. The Klippa of Seichel. Is the Seichel the Klippa is Amalek. So the Rebbe Rashab was speaking that Amalek was Yedei Asribaini, he'd understood all the Yinyonim of Elokus and he rebelled against them. So the Bishop of Masmid was there, and the Rebbe Rashab stopped him mid-sentence. He basically wanted to tell the Rebbe Rashab if that's the case, then all Chabadniks are Amalek. Who else understands God? Who else learns Chabad? Who else learns Chassidus that they understand the halachos? He wanted to say to Rebbe Rashab that if that's the klip of Amalek, then anybody that learns Chassidus is Yedei Asribainei, and yet we rebel against. But he stopped him mid-sen. He didn't let him finish the statement. But when a person comes to the time of Slichas, a person says, I did it, I know I'm wrong, let's move on. Let's move on. Because now, because I fell so low, I fell down, so when I jump back, the more you go down, the higher you can go up. The more you go back, the further you can go up. So a Jew says by Slichas, you know what? Yes, I'm very low. I really did bad. I'm not good. It should have been better. But let's move on. So Hashem says, if that attitude, I'm going to come and put on my talis, it says in the Medrash, and Vayav Hashem upon it, that Yud Gimel Midas Rechem is going to be revealed, and the Jew is going to do tshuva. Every Jew is going to get forgiveness. So rather than, in other words, the shaking that a Jew needs to do by slichas, to go to slichas, shaking and tipsy and moving, is an attitude of how do we move up? How do we do better? How can we go, yes, I fell down low. We don't deal with the past. Past is gone. We don't harp on the past because all that does to the person is it drags them down into the mud. And if it drags them down into the mud, they don't get anywhere because they're sunk in quicksand and they can't get out of it. Chassidus comes along and says, the past, if you make up your mind for the future, Hashem forgives the past. And that's the attitude every Jew has to have on by Slichas and Rosh Hashanah. Yes, I did a lot of things no good, way too much. Things that are no good, and everybody knows their level, that what they did, and if they don't know, they're a fool, because by Chassidim, the worst thing was for a person to fool themselves. There's even, it's not even a Chassidic song, it's a Misnagdish song. Die Welt is a schmaler Brick und der Rieke ist nicht so nah in sich. The world is a small, narrow bridge. So some people sing and you shouldn't fall off. But by Chassidim they used to sing, und the Iker, we shouldn't fool ourselves. The worst thing that a person could do is to fool themselves not knowing who they really are. In both ways. Not to think we're better than we are, and at the same time not to think we're worse than we are. We need to make a cheshbon nefesh of what I am and where I should be. And that's what Slichas is all about. Slichas is making a cheshbon, and this is the preparation for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Okay? The chassid makes a cheshbon hanefesh
To come on time?
where they are, and where they should be going. If that's what you want to do, and you want to sleep away your life,
Hey, nobody forced you.
Hashem says, listen, Hashem leads a person. No, the Gemara says, in the way the person wants, Malichanai say, Hashem leads the person where the person wants to go. Hashem helps us, Hashem tries to help us, but you know what? I know it's not a joke. The problem is it's not a joke. The problem is, after Slichas, we have to ask ourselves a question tonight. After Slichas, okay, I changed. How is tomorrow going to be better than today? If not, then you're going to bed. If after Slichas I'm going to bed, I don't mean physically. I mean spiritually. You're going to go to bed, you're going to go to sleep, you're going to go into Golus, you go into Ani Yeshena, but even then, the Pasuk says, Ani Yeshena, I am Bavali Be'er, but my heart is awake. That's Hashem. We're talking about ourselves. It says a person, sleeping, but the libi ard. Ani yashen, I am sleeping, the libi ard, the pasuk says, because the heart of a Jew is always alive. So the question is, what happens on Rosh Hashanah? What happens? Slicha is a preparation for Rosh Hashanah. But in Rosh Hashanah, what happens? A person comes, and again, by Chassidim it's a whole different story. By Chassidim, Rosh Hashanah is big in a malchus. The main thing of Rosh Hashanah is Melech Halal M'Kul B'Chveidecha B'Yeda Kapol K'Alta Pa'alte. Hashem should be the king. Every creation should know that Hashem made him, and it's all Hashem. That Rosh Hashanah from a Chassidic perspective. But now, like we learned Al Rebbe's Maimer, we proclaim the king as king again, and we become bottled to the king. So now the question is, every year in Rosh Hashanah, Al Rebbe says in Tanya, a new revelation of halachos comes down that was never there before. So now the question is like this. We're going to say Slichas soon, and we're going to have Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and we're going to blow shofar, and we're going to daven, and we're going to have tashlich, and all the wonderful things. The main question is, a chassid needs to ask himself, or every Jew needs to ask himself, with what am I changing? How am I shake up? You know, in business, when they say there was a shake up in the company doesn't mean that there was an earthquake. Shake up in the company means you change it, the company, you change it. Right? You throw out the no good nicks, and you take in the good nicks, hopefully. The good nicks. But when you say a shake up in a company, what it means is you're changing the company for the better. But if there's no shake up, then what's different this coming year than last year? And that's the beginning of it, is slichas, because the Jew realizes by slichas we're tapping into a level of halachic that no matter where we are, Hashem said there are no sins. There are no sins. That's it. So if you have that attitude, then why should anybody be upset or depressed? Again, seriousness is not depression. Merirus, bitterness, meaning, like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, merirus means when you realize how far away you are from Hashem. Yeah, how far you are away from Hashem. It's not depression. It's realization I need to come closer.
Asking for Rahman.
If somebody, the Rebbe always told people, when people came to the Rebbe and they told him they're depressed, every time the Rebbe said to the person, that comes from the Yetzer Hara. How do you know it comes from the Yetzer Hara? The Rebbe said it comes from the Yetzer Hara. And sadness, anytime a person was sad, the Rebbe said it comes from the Yetzer Hara. How do you know that it comes? Why should depression come from the Yetzer Hara? Because the Yetzer Hara doesn't want you to do a mitzvah. So he can't come to you and say, don't do the mitzvah. You're not going to listen. So what is it? It gets you depressed. You're no good, you did this. And then the Yetzer Hara comes and says, oh, you're depressed and you can't do anything. You have to go to sleep, go to bed. And that's it. So that's all from the Yetzer Hara. But by us, we have to understand, we have to, like the Rebbe always told the Sikha to the kids, you have to outsmart the Yetzer Hara and to realize we have this relationship with Hashem. It's an unbelievable relationship. Yes, we are far, but as soon as we go out to meet the king is there. The king is in the field. All we got to do is go out. The king opens the door. The king opens the door. He says, come in. We have to have a little bit of brains to come in. That's what slichus is, to realize we can go in. We go into the door. How do you go into the door? By realizing that Hashem is super great and super kind, and therefore what happened in the past is gone. Hashem forgives us, but it's on the condition that tomorrow we're better. Because if tomorrow we're not better than we are today, why should Hashem forgive us? I mean, it doesn't work. You make a shake up in the company, you shake it up and keep the same people in. I mean, so what did you accomplish? You have to,
Teach him a lesson.
Teach you a lesson. The person needs to understand that we need to be better. That's all. And that is what Rosh Hashanah is all about. There's a new revelation of halachos. Slichus is having to tell a person Hashem has a relationship with us. Listen, we mentioned this many times. It's a phenomenal sikha from the Rebbe. The Rebbe asks a question. When Mitzrayim was coming behind the Jews, Hashem said to Moshe, forget Egypt. Dava b'nei Yisrael v'Yisrael. Atem tachrishun, don't daven, don't do nothing. Yeah, Hashem yilachem lechem, you just move on. Yet by Amalek, a few days later, Amalek, Hashem says, say hilachem b'Amalek, go fight Amalek. Why Amalek does Hashem say to fight? And Mitzrayim, Hashem says, forget about it. I'll fight for you. It's a phenomenal concept, the Rebbe says. We've said a million times here. The Rebbe explains, Mitzrayim is coming from behind us. Mitzrayim represents the past. The past is coming to haunt you. Hashem says, don't deal with it, don't talk to it, don't daven to it. Do one thing. Daven al b'nei Yisrael v'Yisrael, move on to the future. Forget the past. Then Hashem will forgive us. It comes to going forward, and Amalek is coming to stop a Jew in front of us. To stop, it's not the present, it's not the past, it's the present and the future. Then Hashem says, say hilachim b'Amalek, go fight Amalek. Why? Because the future, you got to fight. The past here is in the history book. We stand by slichus, you daven, you mean it, Hashem forgives us. But, he says, on the condition, I'm giving you this in credit. We mentioned the other day in Likutei Torah, I mean, it doesn't say that, but the Refili Rebbe said, why is hakafis and Simchas Torah called hakafis? Simply it means, because you go, hakafah means you go around. You dance around the bima. But the Refili Rebbe said, hakafah also means a guarantor, guarantee. The hekif means you give somebody back, it means you give him on credit. What does it mean? You give him credit. On Simchas Torah, Hashem gives every Jew for the year hakafah. It gives the credit. Hashem, I'm going to give you the goods. I'm going to give you the goods, the Friedrich Rebbe says, on credit. But you have to pay up eventually. You can't just take it on credit and be a Jew and just run off with the merchandise. You need to, and that's the difference. That's what it's all about. It's seriousness of what we were, where we're far, and yet how close we could become. And it's standing together with all parts of ourselves to become one, with everybody else to become one. In Achdus, what happened, bottom line is, it happens. And we move on to a beautiful year. And this year's Hakel. It's a year of Mashiach, mamash a year of Mashiach. Hakel is on Hashem. The Medrash says that Mashiach comes from Mitzvah Shemitah, Mitzvah Shvius, the Medrash says. The year after Shemitah, Mashiach comes. Why? It's a year gathering together, called Gadol Yevareinu, of gathering everybody together. So we have to get ready for it. We have to get ready for Mashiach. And that's only done by moving ahead, not harping on the past. You have a negative relationship, forget about the negativity. Move on. Move on. The Rebbe told people, both in medicine, the Rebbe told people, and in therapy, so to speak, the Rebbe told people, don't harp on the negative aspects. Because when you fight dirt, you get dirty. You have an issue with somebody, think the positive relationship that exists. Think the positivity. When you harp on the positivity, the negativity doesn't exist. And that's what Hashem tells us on Slichos and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Don't harp on negativity. Because then you know, all that stuff.
Drags you down.
Of course it drags you down, because it's only coming from the Yetzer Hara. But the Rabbeim have an expression many times, Chassidim seinen kluge. Chassidim are smart. They don't do stupidity, they don't fall to the stupidity of the Nefesh Habamis of the Yetzer Hara. We fall, we don't fall. We go, we move ahead. The Chaim, have to get ready for Shlichus. Chaim. If you guys washed and you ate a kazayis, you got a bench. What's the mitzvah?